Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. As you know, music is the universal language of the world. And tonight here at the Jazz Standard, I'm proud to introduce you to a saxophonist who hails from Israel by the name of Ely Degibri. Now, tonight, this gentleman is playing music from an upcoming project in which he pays tributes to one of his heroes, saxophonist Hank Mobley. Now, in the span of 15 years, Eli has played and studied with the great Herbie Hancock, as well as Clark Terry, just to name the endless few. Tonight, we had a chance to sit down and talk about the legacy and reflect on saxophonist Hank Mobley and what he means to jazz music, as well as talk about how Israel played a part in him trying to get into the world of jazz, and how the culture barrier taught him and allowed him to learn as well as become a budding as well as a successful saxophonist. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds and highlights of some of the music from the upcoming project, the tribute to Hank Mobley by saxophonist Ely Degibri, tonight here on the Pace Report, here at the Jazz Standard, here in New York City. Ellie, I thank you for allowing me to take advantage and also witness a project that you hold dear to your heart. Tonight you're playing music of the great Hank Mobley. And I want to ask you, in the idiom of jazz, where he holds one as a musician and a composer, because he's post-bop, but he's also part of that great lineage of the great Blue Note era.
That's right. I think Hank Mobley is one of the musicians, jazz musicians, saxophonists, and composers who are most unrated, and I don't even know why, and I'm not sure why, because his compositions are just incredible compositions, and his saxophone playing is the most soulful storytelling that you can ever ask. And I know that when I grew up listening to jazz, Soul Station, which is the project that we're doing here, with the great Art Blakey on drums, Paul Chambers and Wynton Kelly, it's just a masterpiece of a CD. And it made me want to play, and it made me play like I play today. The whole architecture of melody and how to tell a story, I got that from Hank. And so I feel very proud to be playing this project, which we recorded recently. The recording will come out next year, 2018. And what I did is something that's really special to me. I basically recorded the whole CD from top to end. So I recorded all the tracks, just touched it a little bit, but almost didn't touch it. And if you want, it's like a remake of this great movie. Like this is something that they do in Hollywood all the time. They take a great masterpiece and they do it again with no, you know, no. I didn't have any intent to change it or to make it better. It's just my way of saying thank you to Hank, and it's great. And I can tell you that we recorded it, and it's just, and also mixed it just like the way the Blue Note records were mixed, and it sounds really nice. I'm very happy about it.
Ellie, tell everybody about Hank Mobley as a musician, because going back to what I asked you earlier, the time that he put out recordings of Blue Note, you had a great lineage of saxophonists that were doing their thing, ranging from Ben Webster, who was still living, John Coltrane was making a very important mark in jazz, Yusuf Lateef. There were a lot of tenors,
Right.
especially in the 60s, moving forward. And there were some things about him on that Blue Note label that I thought was very interesting. One, he always accompanied some of the great other musicians on that label, but as a leader, he had his own thing going too.
He did, but something that's interesting. If you go on YouTube, for example, and you write Hank Mobley, you can't find a single video of him playing, which is incredible. All of the rest of the people you mentioned, you see tens or hundreds of videos. And so I guess he was a very shy guy, or like he didn't like the front. I'm not sure why, but um, his music was really, really imaginative and soulful. And like I said, I think Soul Station is a CD that is remarkable also in the choice of musicians playing with him. He played with Art Blakey in the Jazz Messengers, but Art didn't really do a lot of sideman stuff, but he did it with him. That means something. I can think about one more CD, which is Cannonball Adderley, with Miles. It's the same thing, the same honor. Miles never played as a sideman, other than with Bird right before that. And he showed him this respect, and I feel that Art Blakey for sure acknowledged this mastery, this incredible saxophonist and storyteller.
You have a very interesting background, and jazz and music is the universal music and language of the world, and you hail from Israel. And I find it interesting how over the years I've seen you play one of an amalgamation of great artists, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to ask you, as an Israeli living in America, playing the idiom of music, how have you been received, and what are you doing to the music to enhance what you take globally with you when you play?
Well, first, I'd like to say, and I keep saying that every time I talk to my audience, especially my American audience, is that I'm so grateful and thankful for America and for this, music to come from here and influence uh, so many people and myself. And I feel that this is a great honor just to be able to touch this music and to be able to play it here in New York City. And I feel really a lot of gratitude to the welcoming that I got from, you know, teachers here and jazz masters such as Ron Carter and Al Foster and Herbie Hancock, and of course musicians my age and younger and older. And every time I do that, I have to pinch myself and say, "Wow, you're really playing jazz. This is amazing. You're from Israel, and this is a great honor for me to be able to play this music." Um, so, in sense of like what who is Ellie in this music, it's I always say that since I started listening to the music in a very early age, this was like my second language, or even maybe my first language. It was Hebrew and jazz. And I always say, in my case, it didn't really matter if I was born in Harlem or in Tel Aviv. I sucked on this music from a very little age. So I feel like I speak the language, and at the same time, obviously, the place I was living in, Israel, and the music that was there probably was also an influence on my playing in some ways that maybe I wouldn't even be able to explain. Um, but to be honest, I what I like the most is just you know Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, uh, Sonny, uh, Monk. These are the people I grew up on. So this is my favorite kind of music, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to play. I'm playing, and I'm trying to hear how they, you know, what they did, and I'm trying just to do that by imitating this. But because I am who I am, I will never be able to sound like them. So it's like just like a person like who's born to his mom and daddy. He's both of them. They tell him, they shape him. But no matter how much he will try to become like their his parents or her parents, he will always be himself. So this is also something I tell my students. You always need to look up to these guys and to listen to them and to try to play what they did, transcribe and make sure you really understand the tradition, the originality and all that, the individuality, all that will come naturally. And yeah, this is my way of looking at it.
Ellie, you and I did some research on you. You started off playing mandolin
I did.
before you moved to the saxophone. Tell me about how you were exposed to American music, jazz, the art form, and how you knew at a particular point in your life that you knew that you wanted to pursue this? Because I've interviewed musicians from all over the world, and they have very different stories by way of the BBC radio and pilot radio and pirate radio and other avenues where people from all over the world just got a grasp of this music.
Well, I'll tell you two stories. First one is when I'm 10 years old. I've been playing the mandolin for 3 years now, and I was in a conservatory of music. It's an after hours, after school conservatory, and I was walking down the corridors of the conservatory, and I hear those like happy notes, coming from somewhere. So I open the door, get into the rehearsal, and there is a Dixieland band playing, a youth Dixieland band, and they're all wearing, shiny outfits, and shiny hats, and they're playing. And you know how Dixieland is something that's very, very spiritual and uplifting. And I see it, and I was a 10-year-old, and I see them, and they look like magicians to me. Like I could actually see the notes coming out of their sleeves into the air, and like how they manipulated it. And I was like, whoa, what the hell are they doing? And it sounded so great, and they're doing it together. And this is the first time I fell in love with jazz. I didn't even know it was called jazz. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that this is what I want to do. Not too long after I started playing the saxophone. And the second story is now I'm 16, and the first thing I said to my teacher at 10 years, I was like, I want to know how to be a magician. Basically, I want to know how to improvise. I was so eager to know how to do that. And so he told me, just like I told you before, just transcribe. And this is what I did. I did it for 6 years. I was transcribing everything, everyone you can think of, with my pencil. And back then we didn't have, those apps that you can make the music 50%, slower, or, I was working really hard on those transcriptions. But still, I didn't feel it like I really knew how to improvise. I didn't feel anything. Like I was still frustrated.
It was almost like you emulating Picasso, but
Yeah.
the Picasso's the real thing. But what you were trying to emulate, you can't do it. There was no feeling to it.
No feeling, and I couldn't, and I was really frustrated. And we in the high school we had a concert outside for the students, and like we had a couple of times a year. And this specific time, I was playing, and I started my solo with a Sonny Stitt solo. Like I was imitating Sonny Stitt. And I played, and I finished his solo, and now it was like my turn to keep improvising. And all the rest of the times I was just like, crashing. But this time, I started flying, and I improvised, and I realized that something is happening. And I could actually see myself coming from myself and looking at me. And I was like puzzled, and I was like, whoa. And this is all while I'm playing. I could, for the first time, feel something. And that moment I knew that I got it from, it sunk. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Ellie, I've interviewed Anat Cohen, who hails from Israel also. Her family have made a very remarkable dent in the jazz world, both here and abroad. And what is it? There's a trend of Israeli jazz musicians who really are not for it. There's quite a few people out here who are really bringing the idiom of jazz to another generation and bringing it to the next level. What is it about Israeli musicians that are really taking this music serious? And back at home, are there avenues for you to go to like school to play the music like a Berkeley or like a Howard University? Are there institutions like that over there?
Yes, in fact, there are many institutes, but in Israel, and especially in Tel Aviv, there are few schools that have jazz already when you're like in elementary and what do you call it, after elementary, middle school. So people actually start playing and being exposed to jazz in very early age. And so I think the reason is it's a mix of a few things. One is very good education that we have for that music. People like even myself, about 6 years ago, I moved back to Israel. And after being here for 15 years, I'm still traveling. I'm playing all over the world, but my base is in Israel. So I teach over there, and I have a lot to say about it. And people are being, they're curious, and so we have good teachers, and we have good students because they're very eager to learn. And I think also there's one more thing, that being an Israeli and maybe also Jewish, we have always something to prove. We want to prove ourselves and the world, because we are a minority in the world, that we are good at what we do, that we want to achieve something. And I remember when I was young, I didn't know that it's because of that, but I really wanted to prove myself and my parents and my friends that I'm good, that there's something that I can be excellent in. And I had this drive, and I think a lot of Israelis have this drive, like they want to prove something.
And you know, jazz is about improvisation. Improvisation. It's also about just the spirit of liberation, liberating your soul, just to be part of this music. How has it been since you moved back? The reception of staying back at home after being abroad and playing with guys like Al Foster and Herbie Hancock. How's it been for you to get adjusted back to your own native land?
It's been really wonderful. I'm an only child. I'm very attached and tight with my parents, who are old. My dad is 88 years old, and it was very important for me to be with him, um, and with my mom as well. And so, just for that reason, it has been, and it is still just wonderful. I'm spending so much time with them. We eat together, we talk, we uh, we listen to music together, and I have also lots of friends and lots of students, and I just feel great to be able to enjoy both worlds, which is basically to have this close relationship with my parents and my friends, and at the same time to be able to come, for example, to New York and to play at the Jazz Standard, or next month to go to South Korea and play there at the Jarasum Jazz Festival, and after just come back home and see my parents and my family.
Tell the viewers out here about your pilgrimage to the United States by way of Berkeley and then by way of the Thelonious Monk Institute of Music. You had some very influential mentors, but how was the adjustment coming from Israel to a foreign land like America and competing with hundreds of musicians from all over the world? Because Berkeley is like the MIT
Yeah,
and the Harvard of music.
for sure. It wasn't easy. I remember, the mentality is so different between Israel and America. Even simple stuff like I remember coming to the States. I was 18 years old, like really young. Never been here. I've been here before, but never lived here, really. Going into the taxi, giving him the address. When we get there, I get out of the taxi. I give him, the fare, and I take my stuff, and he starts swearing at me, like he's pissed. And later I realized it's because I didn't tip him, but that was something that I wasn't used to, like so. Even like small stuff like that, there is a lot of what you call I don't know, like,
Cultural barrier?
yeah, exactly, cultural barrier, and especially when you're so young and insecure, and I was very insecure. But and yeah, and like I say, it was very difficult. One more thing was just the winter. It was January. I'm coming from Israel. We have desert in Israel. It's hot. This winter, I'm telling you, I for weeks I was crying every night, like in my bed. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was so hard. So even so, like I said before, I had this motivation because I really wanted it, and I really wanted to prove myself that I can do it. And so even though it was difficult, and it was, um, I kept doing it. And eventually, of course, I got friends and I got recognition by Herbie. Like already at 19, I played with the Monk Institute band. He was there. His wife, Gigi, came to me after, and she said to me, Herbie doesn't stop talking about you. I was so happy. I jumped on my bed for like on my hotel bed for like hour. I couldn't bury that. I couldn't believe that she told me that. So I have really good stories and good experience with America and with like how these amazing jazz musicians that I wouldn't even dare to dream to play with acknowledge my music and my playing. And that's amazing. I feel very honored.
Ellie, what were some of the key points that you learned as a musician in America playing? And you played and toured and recorded with Herbie Hancock, also Al Foster. Al Foster was on your debut record.
Yeah.
What was it? What was it that you learned from those two guys? Because Al comes from the whole Miles Davis, but he's also played with endless other artists. And Herbie has always been a trendsetter. He's a guy that always been a game changer. And every decade he does something completely
Right.
against the grain.
It's exactly like you said. With Herbie, almost everything you did, as long as you were true to yourself, was accepted by him. Was You could play any note, he would make it a diamond. Just even if it's the worst note you can ever think of, he would be able to make sure it sounds great. And with Al, there was more discipline and tradition, and sometimes it was very difficult, let me tell you, and frustrating. But after playing with him 10 years and already 6 years that uh, uh, his band is a little different now. So 10 years and the 6 years, so 16 years in retrospective, I feel that I learned so much from this guy. And for me, Al is like another dad, another father, both musically and spiritually. And also, I have this great honor. Al just called me now. He said he's coming, so he's going to be coming to the second set tonight.
All right.
And I feel very privileged and nervous to be playing in front of him. And I know he's very proud of me, and that makes me, like a son. You want your daddy to be proud of you, and yeah.
It seems that you pretty much are very comfortable in your skin musically. And as a male who lived in New York City in America, what is it that you tell other musicians that want to find themselves as a musician and as an artist who want to come to America? What are some of the things some of the blueprints that you would lay out for up and coming artists?
Well, I can think of a few. One thing is, these days I see a lot of musicians from all over the world, and already in very young age they want to have their own thing. They're composing, they're having their own band. They want to innovate, to do something. And when I was young, when I was 16, 17, 18, all I wanted to do is to play with great musicians. Like my dream was to play with Herbie Hancock, to play with Al Foster, Ron Carter, with Brett Meldau. I wanted that so bad. I didn't care about composing or anything, just playing and talking, speaking the language. And I feel this is something important that a lot of young musicians should still do, like still want to, first of all, just play with great musicians and then start thinking about what, you know, what they can do after, like how can they become their own voice. Another thing that's just practical is that if you can, try to come here with a little bit of savings because it's not fun to be broke in New York. And take your time, don't necessarily rush into, even though I did that, but it in a way it made me who I am, but at the same time it left some scars on my soul. And I think sometimes you can take your time and be ready for this, especially when you come from like Israel, somewhere far away, just so you can be more relaxed about have a little bit more confidence. The rest, this is New York City. It's just so amazing and overwhelming. I guess this would be the last thing. Just don't be so overwhelmed. Just you know your place. It's like if you look at it, it's overwhelming just to be in this planet. So many people, but this is what makes you modest. We are tiny, just little fraction of this, you know, uh, music.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Make sure you support Ely Degibri's upcoming project, the tribute to Mr. Hank Mobley, which is coming out early in 2018. I'd like to personally thank Ely for his time, also the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for the warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.